Good evening, everybody. I'm Senior Bishop Dr. Julius Kwedhi, and I'm coming to you today from Cape Town, South Africa. I'd like to continue our conversation by talking about expectations. So we have spent quite a number of time, significant amount of time, talking about marriage preparations, talking about things to consider, things to look at uh, before you get into a relationship. We have spent also a significant amount of time looking at building the right foundation for your marriage relationship before it begins, and the importance of building the right foundation. Today, I would like to get into the topic that I have looked forward to exploring. Again, these series of videos are designed for couples who are preparing for marriage, as well as for those who are in their marriages, who are married, and would like to deepen their knowledge, to increase their knowledge in order to build their marriages, that in order to see great success in their marriages. Yes, we want to build healthy marriages. We want to build successful marriages. We want to build marriages that glorify the Lord. Right, when we're talking about expectations, I don't need to get into the definition. We all know that an expectation, of course, is something that you're looking forward to, right? So when you talk about expectations in marriage, these are things that you're looking forward to. And usually, when we talk about expectations in marriage, we're usually talking about what a husband expects from the wife, right? Or what the wife expects from the husband. What you, as a woman, as a fiancé, are looking forward to receiving in your marriage from your now fiancé, or the other way around. And so we are now going to look at a deeper analysis of our expectations and see how we can navigate ourselves, how we can use our expectations to navigate ourselves well, and also to make sure that we have a proper understanding of expectations and also check ourselves, because as you will see, the topic of expectation is very, very crucial, very important for your marriage, very important for the success of your marriage. In fact, I remember when we were getting married, before, in our premarital counseling sessions, the pastor that was giving us marriage counseling, premarital counseling, asked my wife and I at that time at that time when we were doing our premarital counseling, to write down a list of things that we expect from each other. All right. So we wrote down the list of things that we expected, things that I expected from my wife uh, when we get married, and vice versa. She wrote down things that she expected from me when we would have been married. And then that is in the first column, right? And then in the second and third column, the second column, uh, we then swapped we then swapped the letters, right? We swapped the papers, and then there was the second and the third column. In the next column, the second column, we would each tick that this I will do, this I will do, this I will do, this I am able to do. In the third column, then we would tick or put a cross on what we don't think we will be able to do, right? That you expect this of me, I don't think I'll be able to do this. You expect this of me, I don't think I'll be able to do that either. And then if there is a negotiation on any one of the points, and then you also indicate that this one, let's talk about it. And then we would give each other back our papers, and then we began to discuss our expectations, our list of expectations. Of course, the list of expectations are not exhaustive. We're not exhaustive, and as you can tell, because relationships are dynamic. In fact, marriage relationship is dynamic. There is growth. There are a lot of things that take place. If there is one thing that you can expect from your marriage, is that there will be change. There will be change, and you are going to change. And so even your expectations are going to change. So yes, indeed, these are dynamic. But then before the wedding, we wrote down and then we did this exercise. And then we discuss. And so in our negotiation, in our discussion, that was a sort of negotiation, you see, to say, this is what you expect of me in marriage. I'm able to do that. Now, of course, also to find out, why is this important to you, right? And then also the things that we think we will not be able to do or meet, expectations that we think we are not going to be able to meet when we get married. We also discussed those, that I don't think I'll be able to meet this expectation. Let's talk about it. Why is this important for you? All right? Can we meet halfway here? Can we change this expectation? This is what I'm able to do, for example. And so that is a very good exercise that you can implement in your marriage if you're already married and you're struggling with this situation of expectations. And for those of you who are in courtship and are actively preparing for marriage, you could also practice this exercise and see how it will help you in your communication and as well as catapult your marriage preparations. I want to say the following, that expectations are so crucial for your marriage that you don't even realize it. And each and every one of us have expectations. If you are speaking to your future wife or your future husband, and he's saying to you, let's say you are asking him or her to tell you what he expects from you, suppose you are doing this exercise, and the other person says, I don't have any expectations. Or if somebody says, I'm just getting into this relationship and I have no expectations whatsoever, I would say, don't believe that. That is far from reality. That is not the truth. This person is afraid to express their expectations, either because of what happened in the past, and usually it's because of what happened in the past. It could be something that happened to them, something that they have seen happen to other people, something that had affected their parents. Either way, everybody has expectations. Everyone has expectations, right? And so the only question is, what are your expectations? So the question is not whether or not you have expectations. It's not whether or not your spouse or your future wife, your future husband has expectations, because it is an established fact. You can literally take that to the bank, that they have expectations. And as I'm about to say, as you'll see, we are going to categorize these expectations. So they have expectations, and you can bank on that. Maybe they're afraid to say them, maybe they're afraid to express them, but they do have expectations. So everybody has expectations. So we begin at that point. You have expectations, your future wife has expectations, your future husband has expectations on various areas, on literally every area in your marital relationship or in your courtship relationship, right? So the expectations are there, and you can see they span across all the areas of marriage. Now, the second thing I would like to say is this, that the expectations that you hold dear, or the expectations that your future wife holds dear, the expectations that your future husband holds dear, are affected, are informed by a host of factors. The expectations that you hold in your heart, the expectations that your your fiancé or your fiancée holds dear in his or her heart are informed by a number of factors, including but not limited to their personality differences, their personalities, right? Your expectations are affected, are influenced, are informed by your personalities, whether you are a perfectionist or not, whether you are a realist or not, whether you're a pragmatist or not, whether you are a sanguine, as they say, or you are a melancholic, whether you are an extrovert or introvert. All those things play a role to shaping your expectations. Personality, I said. The most important determining factor of your expectations are, or should I say, the most determining factor of your expectations is your family background. Background. You could say background in the broader sense of the word, and then the majority of that background is obviously your family background. Yes, the way you were raised by your parents, how your father treated your mother, how your mother treated your father, how they responded to each other, how they treated one another, how your sisters treated you, how your brothers treated you, how you interacted with your cousins, the family background. As we know, education begins at home, right? And some of us have vowed never to repeat what our parents have done, or have vowed to continue the legacy of our parents. So depending on the kind of dynamic, on the dynamic of the relationships that we had with our parents and relatives and siblings, that affects our expectations accordingly. What else affects our expectations? Another very, very important factor, determining factor of our expectations in marriage, in a relationship, your religion, your beliefs, your uh, your deeply held spiritual values. Yeah. So one's faith. Are you a Christian? Now, this these lessons are designed for Christian. This is for these lessons are designed on how to build a successful Christian relationship, a successful marriage relationship, a Christian marriage relationship, successful and healthy Christian marriage relationship, right? And so, if you are a Christian and you happen to marry somebody who is an atheist, for whatever reason, then you can be sure that that person's atheism is going to be a huge determining factor on their expectations in marriage, including expectations on how to raise children, right? So you can never ever discount that. Even as we talk about, your Christian faith informing your expectations, we are also talking about, denominations, right? You cannot imagine how most of us make our decisions based on whether we go to one church or another. And yes, indeed, it ought to have a tremendous and profound impact on your expectations, because this, so to say, is the foundation of your spiritual life. Your church is the foundation of your spiritual life. It plays a great role in your spiritual life, in your growth as a Christian, or in your downfall as a Christian. And therefore, the things that you are taught at church are going to significantly impact and transform who you are, impact and shape your future, right? Impact and shape your future. And then you can talk about another determining factor of your expectations, the expectations of your beloved that you are looking forward to marrying, are the media consumption. What books does he spend time reading? What music do you spend time listening to? What podcasts are you listening to, right? And various social medias, what social media, the degree to which social media impacts you, affects you, right? And of course, cultural norms, cultural values, traditional norms, traditional values, including our ethnic backgrounds. They affect, they shape who we are, and therefore shape our expectations and the trajectory in which we hope uh, uh, um, to catapult our lives. All right. And so, but this is not all, right? I said these are some of the things that affect our expectations. They are not the only things that affect our relation, our expectations, but these are some of the very important determining factors of our expectations, right? Then we can also say things like past relationships. Past relationships. Are you marrying somebody who has been divorced? Are you marrying somebody who has a child out of wedlock? Are you marrying somebody who has been in 10 relationships and this is your first relationship, right? The fact that this person has been in a relationship before has left a tremendous impact on his or her life that has changed the way he or she looks at relationships and will never ever again look at relationships the same way. And so they are entering a new relationship with different expectations, right? So past relationships, and then you can talk about friends. They're friends. The Bible says uh, 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 good company, or should I say, bad company corrupts more good character, right? And so somebody said, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. So your friends, the people that you keep around you, the people that are, remember we have a proverb that says the people that feed you, that give you a drink, right? We use that to refer to influence. The people that influence you, the people from whom you are drinking, right? And so your friends. And I said family background, and some of us did not grow up with family members. Our family members, some of us grew up in children's home, in orphanages. That too has a tremendous impact on our future marriage expectations, on our marriage expectations, current and future marriage expectations, right? The people that raised us, our relationship with God. And I'll say this, that here's another thing that here's another determining factor of our uh, expectations in marriage. Our love languages. Our love languages. As you know, there are 5 love languages. You have the love language of gifts giving, quality time, acts of service, physical touch, and words of affirmation. So these are the 5 love languages, and I categorize them into 2. That you have the 5 love languages, the love languages of giving, and you have the love languages of reception. In any case, we'll deal with that in our next session. The 5 love languages, your love language has a tremendous impact on your expectations, on what you hope to get out of the relationship. Yes, indeed. When you look at the love language of reception, which Dr. Gary Chapman um, hones in on, it primarily deals with what you want to be done to you in order for you to feel loved by your spouse. So it's self-centered. And that has a lot to do with expectations. That is essentially the definition of expectations. What are you expecting from your husband? Are you expecting gifts? Are you expecting words of affirmation? Are you expecting physical touch? Are you expecting quality time? Are you expecting uh, acts of service? So these are all expectations. Now, expectations can be divided into realistic versus unrealistic expectations. Realistic expectations are expectations that are considerate, practical, and in touch with reality. Unrealistic expectations are more of fantastic expectations, right? Things that somebody has seen on the television, has read in some novel somewhere, and think that their wives should also be able to do for them, right? Some fantastic ideas that are out of touch with reality, impractical, and inconsiderate for the other, uh, for your partner. And of course, uh, some of these fantastic ideas come from our past sinful experience. You know, we are all sinners. We are all sinners. We came out of the world, and the world has, for some of us, has left such a tremendous impact on our lives that when we get born again, we do not shed off much of the world. It's a reality. Some of us have not shed off much of the world, and so we are entering into our marriage relationships with worldly expectations. And some of those expectations are fantastic expectations that are out of touch with the reality, that are, some of them are not, are out of touch, that are out of touch with our Christian values and beliefs. Right? So I said expectations can be divided into realistic versus unrealistic expectations. Now, expectations can also be divided into healthy versus unhealthy expectations. Healthy versus unhealthy expectations. Healthy expectations, you could say, are generally expectations that are for the general well-being of this relationship. They are healthy, right? They are normal expectations. When they are fulfilled, they are for the building of the relationship. But unhealthy expectations, on the other end, are selfish, narcissistic, too self-centered, right? And sometimes downright destructive for the relationship. You find that a man, right? This is not just in the church, but you see, a man gets married to his wife, and then he has fantasies of having other people involved in their marriage relationship, right? Has fantasies of inviting other people into their bedroom, or has a fantasy of having his wife perform in a strip club. Very toxic and unhealthy expectations. And so here is a poor woman, had gotten married to her husband. Then all of a sudden, the man is asking her to dance in the club so that he can look at her in the nightclub. Very, very toxic and very unhealthy. Right? Healthy versus unhealthy expectations. You can also have expectations that are spoken versus expectations that are unspoken, right? Or communicated, based expectations that are communicated and expectations that are not communicated. This is now what I was talking about. That at times you find somebody saying, I don't have expectations. I enter relationships without an expectation because I'm tired. I'm tired that when I get into a relationship, the things that you expect, they never happen. They never happen, and therefore I'm left disappointed. And then, long story short, the relationship is over. Now he's looking for a new relationship, and he's saying, or she is saying, I have no expectations coming into this relationship. That is not true. They have just decided to bury their expectations in order to lower the bar, the threshold, right? So that they don't feel disappointed. In any case, expectations remain. All right. Now, your expectations, here is a point. Here's an important point. Your expectations, they shape what an ideal husband is for you, or what an ideal wife is for you. Right? Again, I say it again. That your expectations in marriage, the expectations that you hold so dear in your heart as you enter that relationship, as you are seeking for a wife, as you are seeking for a husband, as you are praying for a wife, praying for a husband, those expectations, they shape what an ideal husband looks like to you, what an ideal wife looks like to you. So you have to pay attention to that. And I would say this, that we should strive. So now again, let me rewind back a little bit. That now in dealing with this topic of expectations, you want to make sure that you have healthy expectations, that you have realistic expectations. You also want to make sure that you communicate your expectations. You speak your expectations. But you also have to be careful. It's not just a matter of speaking your expectations, right? Because there has to be a healthy communication, healthy conversation on these expectations and how these expectations are to be met in the relationship. How these relationships are to be met in the relationship. As you can tell, some of these expectations are based on long-held beliefs and deeply held traditional values, family values, right? Ethnic values. And so these are not things that you can just come into a relationship and say, you must stop doing this, stop doing that, stop doing this, and stop doing that. I'm your husband, I command you, you must stop doing this. I'm your husband, I command you to do this for me. You can't do that. If your mama as you were growing up, your mama cooked you a particular porridge every morning at a particular time, you cannot enter your marriage expecting that your wife is going to cook you that same porridge at that exact time like your mama did. You can't do that. That is totally unrealistic and can be downright toxic, right? Can be downright an unhealthy expectation, because if you are expecting your wife to cook you your favorite porridge the same way your mama did it, it's as if you are saying you want your wife to be your mama. You want your wife to turn into your mom, and you cannot do that. Your wife is not your mom. Your husband is not your dad, right? And so you have to realize that your husband is your husband, your wife is your husband. Sorry, that is not right. Your wife is your wife. She's a unique creature that God has created. Your husband is a unique creature that God has created. This is not your father. Your husband, that's not your father. Your wife, that's not your mother. And I'm aware that for certain women that grew up without their fathers, or that were abused by their, it's the other way around. It's the other way around. But for the women who really love their fathers, the very deep relationship with their father, meaningful relationship with their father. The fathers raised them well, taught them well, and showed them a good, godly character, godly example. They want to get married to men who are like their fathers. And in a general sense, it shouldn't be a bad thing that a man would be as responsible, as loving, as caring, as godly. But as a woman, you have to realize that the man you are marrying is not your father. And that's just the way it is, right? He's not your father, and he's never ever going to be your father. He's never ever going to do things the same way your father did them. Now, it would be desirable if he can be a spiritual man, a great leader in your house, somebody who really loves God and follows after God's heart and is leading you in that direction that God is leading your family, and not somebody that is irresponsible, unspiritual, and all those kinds of things. And so you have to have realistic expectations. And on all these points are intertwined, you see. So you have to have realistic expectations. And some of the expectations we have, they are not bad expectations. But sometimes we communicate them in a bad way. Sometimes you try to manipulate your husband into doing a good thing for you. Or you want to manipulate your wife into doing good things for you, whether that is in terms of sex or in terms of finances or in terms of having children, right? Pregnancy, or in terms of in other ways, right? If you as a wife, for example, you want to have children, and you have that expectation from your husband, you need to discuss. You need to discuss with your husband and agree on the terms of this child rearing or this journey of raising children. You cannot trick your husband into falling pregnant, into you falling pregnant, right? The two of you have to be on the same page. So if you trick your husband, then you end up getting pregnant at a time when your husband is not ready. Then that is going to seriously undermine the trust that you have built and the trust that you are building in that relationship. And so you gotta have realistic expectations. You gotta communicate them in a healthy manner without throwing tantrums, without being selfish and just thinking about yourself. Because for some of our expectations, no matter how healthy they are, no matter how godly they are, you may have to forego some of the expectations, as good as they are, right? Some expectations are good, but you have to forego or you have to wait. Some expectations could be, for example, it could be either way, right? It could be a man or a woman expect that the husband would bring her breakfast in bed for her to feel most loved, as she has seen in her favorite sitcoms. Or the other way around, the man expecting that the wife will bring her breakfast in bed, and she just somehow has to know it. Look, you gotta communicate your expectations, and they gotta be practical, they gotta be realistic, they gotta be healthy, right? But you can't expect your wife to bring you breakfast in bed if you did not discuss with her about the issue of breakfast in bed. You can't. You have to communicate. And you see, when we're talking about this issue of communication, sometimes we have this bad habit of expecting our wives or our husbands to just know what we need. What we need. If he really loved me, he would know that this is what I really want. If she really loved me, she would know that she ought to do A, B, and C for me. You can't do that. We have to stop this kind of childish behavior. You have to sit down with your wife, sit down with your husband, and open your mouth and talk as an adult who has a brain to think and a good mouth to speak that God has blessed you with, right? So you have to communicate your expectations, communicate them in a respectful manner, in an honorable manner, in a way that recognizes the fact that this is a human being that has certain capabilities, that has certain abilities, that also has expectations, that that may or may not be able to do certain things. If your spouse, your future husband, your future wife is declining to do a particular expectation for you, that does not mean that all hell must break loose, right? So you gotta explain, you gotta talk, you gotta reason through, and you have to come to an agreement. Maybe she can't bring you breakfast in bed every single day. Maybe only on your birthdays. Maybe she can't do that on your birthdays, right? Or maybe she can do that once a month. Or maybe she can do that on your honeymoon, right? Sorry, not honeymoon, but on your wedding anniversaries. Or on your honeymoon if you like, right? Maybe she can do that on the honeymoon too, because on honeymoon, you have uh, the in-love experience is still on cloud nine, depending on various factors, of course, right? So expectations, they gotta be healthy, they gotta be realistic, and you have to communicate them. Yes, we have a whole topic of communications that lies ahead of us, but I should tell you that communication is the underlying thread that cuts across the success of your marriage. But if you want your marriage to be successful and healthy, you have to learn to communicate. You have to learn to communicate. If you came to bed late, you want to be woken up at 6 in the morning, and you know that your wife wakes up at 5:30 in the morning, but then you normally wake up at 7 in the morning, but today for some reason you want to be woken up at 6 in the morning, then you're going to tell your wife. You cannot expect that once she wakes up at 5, then she must just know that you need to be woken up at 6. Right? You have to communicate, and you just have to think and be logical at times, instead of fault finding your wife and fault finding your husband and all these things. Now, if we have to do a good job at communicating our expectations. Sometimes we lambast our spouses for not meeting our expectations as if they are not human beings at all. We expect them to do things that we don't even expect from our friends, right? And we expect them to do things we don't even expect of ourselves. We expect them to do things that we ourselves cannot do, right? If you are getting married and you want to just come home, sit down, right? Sit down. 1 o'clock, lunch must be ready. You eat, you put the dishes in the sink, you sit down, you doze off, you wake up at 2 o'clock, you go out of the house, you come back towards the evening, dinner must be ready. And then after dinner is ready, you eat, you go to bed, you wait for your wife to finish washing up, and then you come, and then she comes to bed, and then she has to serve you there again sexually. Then after that, you doze off, you sleep, you wake up in the morning, then she must cook breakfast for you. And then when you come back at lunch, all the clothes must be washed. That is totally unhealthy. That is totally unhealthy. If you are explaining such an expectation to your wife, I would say that is unhealthy. Of course, you may say to me, it depends on a number of factors, but I would say to you that that is totally unhealthy. Yeah. Because you think getting married to your wife, you're just marrying your house help who should be doing everything for you. Then you are not marrying a woman. Then what is this? A marriage? You call that marriage? That is not marriage. Right? That is not marriage. Yes, that is not marriage. So you have to be healthy. That is not a healthy thing for you to expect your wife to be your house help, and that's all. And you are like some sort of Caesar that has to be served, and everything. Your wife has to do everything, and all you have to do is just come home, eat, have sex, shower, and go. Right? You gotta do things at home. You gotta do things at home. Yes. Especially if you want to have a successful and healthy marriage. Okay. So I think we have covered a number of things here. I did not get into certain things, But the underlying points that I've made, I think they really bring the point home of on expectations. If you are going to practice communicating, talking to your spouse, communicating your expectations without throwing tantrums, without finger pointings, without fault finding, without trying to blackmail your spouse, and without trying to manipulate your spouse, and you are also coming from a point of you are ready to negotiate and uh, and be considerate and compromise on certain areas that your wife or your husband is not able uh, to meet, then I would say that is a good way to go, right? And so those are that is the area of expectations, right? That is now expectations. Uh, you could listen to this tape again and again and again and again to help you in your future uh, in the future, should you need to revise this material, right? Should you forget something. But just remember, if anything if you want to remember, if anything that you should remember from this tape, from this recording, from this session is that their expectations have to be realistic. If there are any unrealistic expectations that you hold dear, they have to go. The expectations have to be spoken, have to be healthy, right? And just remember that your expectations, they shape what an ideal husband or ideal wife is for you, and they're deeply affected by your family background, your love language, the media that you consume, by your spiritual relationship, right? Your spiritual relationship with God, your faith, that is. They are affected a lot by your environment, people that you grew up with, uh, who raised you, your neighbors, and things like that. All right, so in the next session, we are going to look at the 5 love languages and see how the 5 love languages will help us to build healthy, successful Christian marriages. And I have been your host today, Senior Bishop Dr. Julius Kwedhi, coming to you today from Cape Town, South Africa.